Welcome back to the Ask Allison podcast. I'm Allison McElroy, a certified fundraising executive for over 30 years, located in Northwest Arkansas, who loves helping people reach big goals. I mix heart, humor, and my experience to lift others up. Thank you again for listening today. I know you have lots of choices, but I'm glad you're tuning in. I'm so glad you're here. Today, my guest is Teresa Mills, and we go way back, probably 28 years, 25.
You're aging me, Allison.
A long time. We have been friends from our early years trying to figure out what to do. We would meet at the little Chick-fil-A and we would discuss and analyze. And it's just been a friendship that has blessed me all these years. I'm glad she's here. And Teresa, without further ado, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, thanks, Allison, for having me on your show. Yay. I do feel like we should have some Chick-fil-A between us for old time's sake.
Yes.
I'm Teresa Mills, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Peace at Home Family Shelter, which is a domestic violence organization that serves Northwest Arkansas. And I've been at Peace at Home for over 15 years, if you can believe it.
I cannot believe it. 15 years. Well, and she's done amazing things at Peace at Home. It is one of the outstanding organizations that I've had a privilege to work with over the years, but also just be aligned with. And as we know, it's much needed in our area. And I just can't say enough about Teresa's leadership and the organization. It's outstanding. And those of you who haven't heard about it, take a look on the website and see what all they're doing. One of the most exciting things that just happened in 2025 or at the end of 2024, I can't remember, you've added a pet program tell us a little bit about that, because I know it's been the greatest addition to your services.
We did. So we serve, of course, victims of domestic violence and their children. But one of the things that we figured out was that families were not going to leave their pets behind. You know, there's a strong occurrence between domestic violence and animal abuse. People who hurt animals also do the reverse. And so one of the things that we were able to do, thanks to a legacy gift that we received from a donor, was to build a pet sanctuary on our grounds so that animals can be with their people when they're staying at our shelter. So it's been a really wonderful blessing, and thanks to endowed giving through legacy planning.
And that's one of those things that we should all recognize. But until this pet sanctuary came up, I had not thought of that as one of the aspects of escaping a situation or leaving a situation. If you think you can save yourself, but you're leaving your pet behind and you know they won't be able to withstand whatever horrible things are happening in the home, you're going to stay because you don't feel like you can. And you can't just leave with a pet and not have somewhere to go that doesn't take a pet.
Absolutely.
So it just, my heart just exploded over that because I just had not thought that through. And until you're in a situation like that, you don't think of those things. And so y'all are helping people to understand there are so many layers of instances and consequences, hurdles, things that you have to jump to try to better yourself or get out of a situation. And that is one of those key elements that is going to help more people who are experiencing that kind of abuse to be able to get out of it if they can bring their kids and their pets and whatever they need to do to get away. So
absolutely. It's all members of the family.
Yes,
absolutely.
And I hope we get to, in later on down, we'll talk about legacy giving a little bit, and that can be the example. But right now, I wanted you to be my January guest because so many of our friends, so many organizations, not just in Northwest Arkansas, but all across the United States, are suffering from not just funding cuts because times are hard and individuals are cutting back their giving, but we have had a lot of people in Arkansas, and I think it's happening in other states too, wake up to find out, a couple of months ago that in 2026, they will not have resources and funding that they've always gotten from their states or the federal government. And they are literally trying to decide how to keep the doors open. And I know that we've gone through this before in other times. And I just thought, you have weathered this kind of storm. And I wanted us to talk about a lot of the organizations just need some practical tips, realistic expectations, ways that they can go back to their board and explain, this is what's going on and this is how we do it. It's not, sometimes board members mean well, but they might have the wrong idea for how to solve a crisis like this. But I thought we could be a good therapy session today.
Let's do it.
And just help organizations because there are several in our area. I know the domestic violence organizations, but also the children's safety centers, children's advocacy centers, children's shelters, children's house here in Northwest Arkansas. Anyone that's experiencing a victim of crime act, there was a huge amount of funding for that also dried up or was redistributed, and no one really knows why it was redistributed. Or maybe you do. I don't know, but it's like one day we were told, hey, we're not going to do that anymore, and y'all are not going to get that funding. So we've got children, families, victims of domestic violence. I'm sure there are many others that I'm not even aware of that are going to lose that funding. And it's to the tune of 6 figures in some instances. It's not just like you're going to lose $20,000. There's a couple of organizations that are going to lose like $600,000.
Right. When I think about 2025 in particular, it's really been a paradigm shift in terms of the support that the federal government is providing to the nonprofit infrastructure across the country. And it can be really terrifying because there is so much that has happened as a result of changes in federal priorities and where money is being invested. And it has really caught a lot of agencies unaware and ill-prepared. Right. And it can be very scary right now. But I think the important thing to know is that this isn't just your agency. This is really across the nation. You're not alone in trying to navigate this, but you can do it. We have had nonprofit philanthropic work before federal money, and we will continue to have great nonprofit philanthropic work even without federal money. Like, it can be done.
It can be done. And what's the hard pivot is how you do it when it's a sudden thing and you aren't as prepared as you've meant to be prepared.
Absolutely.
And that's the reassuring thing we want to say is you are not alone. Everyone out there listening, you're not alone. This is going on, and hopefully today we can give you some helpful tips, some encouraging wisdom, something that we can share. And if anything, if it doesn't help you at all, just know that you're not alone is like the big message of today. But we can all figure out ways to navigate this. So I know you've had this experience before. I wanted you, if you're able to, tell us a little bit about when you changed your job and took the job at Peace at Home, just a little bit of that history and what you walked into.
I certainly walked into an agency that was struggling. I think, they had recently completed a large capital campaign that's always exhausting for staff. It takes a lot of resources. People can get burned out in that moment. And unfortunately, the capital campaign coincided with the 2008 financial crisis. Yeah. And so when I came into the organization, they had built this beautiful new building, but did not have pledges that had been fulfilled. And so we still owed money on this building that had been built. And we had a much larger budget, but hadn't adjusted to the reality of that much larger budget and the needs of a much larger building. And so I think that when I came into Peace at Home, there was a lot of neglect. I around maybe the day-to-day operations and the staffing and the diversification of funding, because there was so much energy that was placed into this capital project, which was important and essential and had to happen. Absolutely. Yeah. But that created a vulnerability that also coincided with an economic crisis, and it caused some real pain points. I mean, I will forever remember opening up the bank account that first day and realizing that Peace at Home had less money in its checking account than I had in my checking account. You know, I'm a nonprofit professional married to a school teacher. That's a scary reality. It's
oh my word.
So those early days were very rough and fraught, but we got through them, you know, steadily, carefully rebuilding those relationships with donors, rebuilding the agency for its new reality. And that work just hadn't been done.
How did you, do you remember, after you picked yourself up off of the floor from the shock and the awe of what was going on, do you remember the first thing you thought, I'm going to do this first? Like when you were able to kind of calm down and say, well, I have some work I've got to do. What do you remember the first steps you took in that moment?
I think the first thing was communication with the board of directors, because I think one of the gaps that had happened is that communication had not been transparent in the same way that it probably needed to be. And so board members were unaware of the reality that we were facing. Board members don't like to be surprised, Allison.
Oh, goodness, no. Not a lot of times, not in this way. They might like a surprise party for their good service or their birthday, but this is not the kind of surprise a board member likes at all.
And so I think that I just approached communication with the board and with the staff just in a sense of radical transparency, not in a way that would create panic, but this is where we are. This is the reality, and we're going to have to shore up support. I think the next most important thing was I got on the phone with our closest donors and had that same conversation with them. This is the reality. This is what we're facing. Will you stand with us? We've come so far together.
Were some of those donors people you had not even met yet? Or had you, because you were development director first.
I was.
So you knew a lot of them, but were there some that had not even met you yet?
I would say probably about 50 to 60% of them, I had never met them, did not know who they were, had no history with them. And I'm kind of cold calling them saying,
my name's Teresa.
Let me tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
We should probably meet. But I was pleasantly surprised how happy donors in particular were to have that FaceTime with me, to take that time and meet with me. And I think one of the things that's always a surprise for leaders is they feel like, oh, we can't ask this of a donor. We can't ask more of them. We've already asked them to support this project. And your closest donors, they're staying with you, and you just have to let them know what your real challenges are and ask them to opt in.
I always say this: if you continue to communicate with those that are closest to you, and you're transparent, and you treat them as a part of your family, your organization's family, that to me is the biggest relationship builder. And most of the time, you typically don't have to make the actual ask,
right?
Because they are in there saying, "What do you need?"
100%.
What does the shelter need? Because you have had that open door conversation and those moments, the good and the bad, to say and that's the thing. If you're communicating with them all the great things that are happening, that's even better. Instead of just talking to them when there's a crisis, but it's like a continuous, hey, wanted to keep you update and let you know someone graduated yesterday. They've been in the shelter or wanted to let you know we're getting a big cut this year. And I love to keep you abreast of everything before it's, because we know it's probably going to be in the news. I just wanted to let you all know first. It makes such a big difference because they feel a part of like they're linking arms with you and we're going to do this together and how can I help? It's just such a big part of, and I think some people worry about sharing that kind of stuff with a donor.
Yes. I think that you have to it's early and often. I think you can't go it alone, especially not in this climate right now. Mm-hmm. You need your strongest supporters to stand with you. And in order to do that, they have to have a real understanding of what's going on. It's a relationship. It's a donor relationship. In order for it to be a relationship, it can't just be transactional. It's got to be a genuine relationship where they feel valued and heard, and you're sharing with them the great work that's happening because of their philanthropy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, when you said that, we're just sharing with them. That's the whole thing, and why sometimes we get into these ruts because we don't share enough, or we don't make sure that that's part of our calendar, is keeping everybody abreast of what's going on, good and bad. And I think they all want to hear the stories, and they all want to feel like they're a part. And so, I know there were probably not with Teresa, y'all, because she's amazing. But was there anything you could look back on and think, well, we probably shouldn't have done that in the crisis mode?
Every day. There was something that we could have done better or differently. Of course. I mean, my goodness. But I think you just have to recognize that that's part of it. Mm-hmm. You're not going to do it perfectly, but you do a little every day. Mm-hmm. I think it's equally important that you not try to do everything all at once, that you are structured about it and strategic about it, because then you spread yourself too thin if you're trying to do everything all at once. Mm-hmm. But of course, you're going to make errors, right? And you communicate those errors and how you address those, particularly with your donors. Donors like knowing that you can handle adversity, that you can pivot, that you can take a hard lesson and figure out what you're going to not do the second time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And once again, you can say, well, we thought this is what we should do.
That's right.
We figured out very quickly this isn't going to work in this crisis that we're having right now. And so I wanted to give you the next update that we're now going to do this because what we thought didn't work, and just keeping them in the loop.
That's right. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging responsibility, even when it didn't work out.
Mm-hmm. Right. And in that process, in that moment, you found that most of the people you talked to, board members and donors, rallied around you.
They did.
Yeah.
They absolutely rallied around the shelter and its mission and were excited to be re-engaged. I think that's something that maybe is an unintended positive consequence of a crisis. Is it's an opportunity to re-engage lapsed donors, or maybe people who are not as connected to your organization. It is a wonderful call to action. It gives you something to have meaningful conversations about and to really know where people are in relationship to your organization. And so I think that there is a opportunity that crisis presents itself that sometimes gets lost in the worry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I got it here on my notes that I keep looking at, about building trust. Mm. And that's the word I was trying to say earlier. When you reach out to your board and your donors, when you're more transparent and more meeting, like, I'm telling you, this is where we are right now. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, it builds a trust between both of you because you've been vulnerable
100%.
And you've laid it all on the table so they can see. But it also is that thing about when you go in with that attitude, the donor comes back with, how can I help? And what can I do? I don't have, that much money, but what could I do? They come up with ways because they want to be a part of the solution. And it goes back to that thing fundraisers always say, if you want advice, ask someone for money. And if you want money, you start with advice. And I think a lot of us, if we would just start with the relationship and the transparency and the here's what's happening first, then the donor has a chance to settle with that and think, oh gosh, how can I help? Instead of being met with we need you to do this.
Absolutely. And I think that this is something where many executive directors err in relation to their board of directors. I think lots of times executive directors feel like they have to go into board meetings with all of the answers. And they have to put this strong front in front of their board, like, I've got it. Everything's fine. We're good. And they kind of put on a dog and pony show for board members. And so then board members don't actually know what's going on. They don't really understand where the pain points are or where the stresses are or what the economic reality is, because all they're showing is the veneer. And I think that's because executive directors sometimes get worried that board members are going to perceive problems as, I can't do my job, you should find someone else to do this job. And so it breeds this, I can't be vulnerable with you, I can't be transparent with you, because I'm afraid that you're going to interpret that as incompetence. But what it does is it creates distrust when inevitably there's an economic crisis, or there's a personnel issue, or there's something that will happen, and then board members are caught unaware, and then that is destabilizing to the relationship between the board and the executive leadership. And so you've really got to flip that, especially if you're trying to change organizational culture, because otherwise board members don't really know, and they really can't help you if they don't know what the issues are.
Right.
And so I think when you're thinking about trust and vulnerability, I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's essential in terms of leadership, especially in crisis.
It is. And I think it's exactly what you're saying. As a nonprofit executive, there's a part of you that wants to show how strong you are.
Right.
And you hired me and I have the skills. But if you really think of it, we always get people on our boards that have expertise from the for-profit world and the nonprofit world. But a lot of times we line up that board matrix with who's good at marketing, who's good at financial planning, who's good at budgeting,
right?
Who's good, all those things. And
we'll never use them.
And never use them because we want to look like we know it all.
Right.
But the whole point is you're rallying a team to give the expertise that, because most nonprofits have a short bench, they've got the people in the seat that know what they're doing, but it's so nice to have some guidance from a set of board members that are coming in, rolling up their sleeves to give their expertise. And the thing is, most board members understand as they come to the table, there's some that don't, but most understand that their expertise is totally different from the nonprofit lens.
Correct.
So that they can still offer a different spin on things to help the executive director. And the executive director should not act like I've got this.
Right.
When that's why we assemble a board of directors. It's like, guys, I am good at so many things, but let me tell you what I'm not good. Funding cuts at the last minute.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
And so we're all going to have to, get together on how we're going to weather this storm.
Yeah, you don't need board members that are just holding down chairs. Like, what is their role and how are you engaging them and helping furthering the mission? That's how you keep engaged board members and build healthy culture.
And they can help. It's so much more than just fundraising.
100%.
And I think they get leery about fundraising, but really there's so many other things that really lead to fundraising or are adjacent to fundraising, but it all comes together. And when we can use their skills, we could go on and on about boards and
that's a whole podcast.
That's a whole podcast about board members and how to make them stay engaged and contributing. But I know we mentioned what you should actually do in the moment. And we've said, reach to the board, reach to your donors. What are some other things that nonprofits could do right now? I noticed that some of the organizations in our area and nationally too have begun to utilize the media, and which is a scary situation also, because sometimes the media doesn't relay the story just like you want them to. But in this case, I feel like a lot of the media has done a great job relaying the cuts and spreading the word about what these organizations are going to be losing. But are there some other ways? Like, would the media be one thing if they, I mean, I know it's tricky with the domestic violence shelter because you need to stay private and hidden. But
I think the thing that I would caution about using the media or this is any communication tool, I would say, is I don't think that it's helpful to give the impression that you're about to close. For your beneficiaries, I would never want a survivor of violence to think that our agency is about to close due to funding. And so I would just want to make sure that whatever messaging that you're giving is inspirational and hopeful and not around, we're going to close tomorrow if we don't raise X amount of dollars.
Panic and fear is not
Panic and fear is never the way. Absolutely. That said, I do think, again, this is a communicate early and often. Your stakeholders, your donors, your board, potentially the media certainly need to be aware of what's happening. I think also internally, things that programs need to think about is what is most mission critical. The reality is that you might have to make some hard decisions. You may not have the dollars to operate all of your programs either at capacity or serving the same number of people. I mean, you might have to really think about that. So one of the things that's so important is what's most mission critical? What has the best return on your investment? Because sometimes programs end up developing activities or projects or whatever that maybe are secondary to their core mission or are nice but not essential. And so I think one of the most important things to do in a crisis situation is to really know where your money needs to be. What is the focus? And prioritize that and know what that number is. Know how much that is for you to do the most essential work and prioritize filling that gap than trying to do all of it all at once. Because there's nothing worse than having 25% of all of your programs across the board funded with restricted dollars, right? You want to make sure that you're fully covering the core of the work first.
Oh, that's a great reminder. And you're right. As we sail on and don't have problems, we start providing some other services that maybe we didn't provide in the beginning.
Right.
And so just taking a good look at what are some services that we've added that are wonderful and helpful and joyful. But right now we need to focus on making sure people are safe and have food, or we have the all the essentials we need to do the forensic interview or the medical
sexual assault exam or whatever it is that is most essential. Absolutely.
And yes. And just and that's hard to do because so many things seem like the thing that we need to do. But when you go through something like this, you've got to take that time to evaluate all the programs and what is a core program.
Right.
I love calling it the core program.
Yes. And I think sometimes the best time to do that is when you're not in crisis, right? And making sure that everyone is on board. And this is leadership, board members, donors, your frontline staff, that you really weighed in and everyone has buy-in on the front end about, in the event of a catastrophic loss, this is where our prioritization is going to be. Basically building your continuation of operations before you're in crisis. That's ideal.
Right. Oh, that's such a good hint. Are there other things that come to your mind? Other steps or other, like the next thing, like after we've listed these things, what is there something else that, and then when we get done and you're like, Allison, I've given you the whole list, we can move to our next topic or our next thing. But
I think, ideally, you need to recognize that funding loss is always a possibility.
always.
It's
Always.
right. It seems really
anything for granted.
It seems really acute right now because there's so many agencies, legacy agencies that are losing significant federal dollars. Like we're in a large shift in where philanthropy is going and where federal money is going. But that said, healthy nonprofits are always thinking about, do we have too much concentration in any one source of funding? Now, that could be a federal grant, that could be a special event, that could be an individual donor.
Right.
And what happens if one of those go away? And so I think a great strategy for board members is, okay, let's map this out. We lose XYZ donor. How much of a gap is that? And where does that impact? And would we prioritize saving that program if that money wasn't there? And where could we pivot? Like having that exercise at a board meeting can be really, really helpful, particularly when you're not in crisis, to map out what that looks like. I really encourage nonprofits to map out their cash flow. They need to know what their liquidity looks like. Consider maybe having a line of credit at a bank that they could access in an emergency situation so that they can continue to operate while they're pivoting through a crisis. I think you always have to recognize that funding changes.
Right.
And you're not too comfortable. You're not thinking about what next year's budget looks like and this grant that's eventually going to sunset. Or maybe your special event gets disrupted because it's COVID and you can't have it because you can't gather people, that you're always considering what it looks like so that you're better prepared to respond in the moment.
I know it's so hard for a lot of our nonprofits to put that little bit away for the rainy day or the crisis or the COVID or whatever comes up. I know that the organization that I worked for so many years, there was not a lot of extra funding at all. Even when I was hired, I would sit by the phone. I think, 4 to 6 months, I would wait after every board meeting to see if they were keeping me or not keeping me, because it literally was a strain to bring a person to do fundraising and raise awareness, onto the team. And I remember one of our board members, a dear person, he knows who he is. He was one of the first board members for the fundraising arm of that organization. And he said, we need to put 10% back of every unrestricted gift.
Absolutely.
I think the lady that did our bookkeeping at that time, I think she hated when we would bring a donation in because she was already mad. We needed all of it.
Absolutely.
We needed the whole percent, the whole 100% to run the building. And it drove her bananas that we had to put that. It might have been 25. It was 25%.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
So it was but fast forward to our capital campaign, when some land came available and they were going to do a bargain sale, we had this little chunk over in an account that we were able to use to purchase that land 100% at a discounted rate, a much discounted rate. But all we could do is look back and remember how hard that was. So every $100 gift, they got $75, and we put back that 25% and $25. So, but it did add up. It was slow. And it was, like I said, it was excruciating for her trying to pay the bills. And like you're talking about, she's looking at the account and thinking, if we could just keep it, but in the long run, it worked out. And so sometimes it's 10%, but boards can come up with, is that the kind of thing you're talking about where they can start saving because a lot of them really feel like they don't have any money to spare for savings.
I think that this is where the exercise of what happens if we lose XYZ donor or fundraiser or whatever becomes really important. It's like, oh, that's $50,000 out of our budget. What would we do suddenly? And that going through that exercise can help reframe the prioritization around building unrestricted liquidity. Mm-hmm. And it is a slow process, but even if it's $1,000 a year, mm-hmm. That little bit can add up over time, and it's better than $0 that's available. Right. Much like your own personal savings account, it's the same thing.
Just like when Christmas or holidays roll around, and you think, "Why didn't I put a little back all year?"
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think the metric right now is that healthy nonprofits have 6 months of liquidity laying around, and you think, my goodness, 6 months of liquidity, that's so much money. Mm-hmm. But just think about how much easier you would sleep at night, nonprofit leaders, if you had a month of liquidity mm-hmm. or 2 weeks of liquidity. I mean, mm-hmm. even if it's a small amount, it can really make a difference in your ability to weather.
Right. Just like, we've mentioned these funding cuts, but we had a government shutdown.
Absolutely.
So everybody was behind on getting their government, the thing that they get, just for their billing, the services they provide. So if you have this nest egg somewhere, and like we said, it's excruciating to do that when you don't have any money, but you have to start somewhere. Start small, start however you can, but use the board to analyze that situation. Yes, that's a great tip.
How much money do we really need to be comfortable? Mm-hmm. What's going to help us sleep a little better at night? Mm-hmm. I think that's also a great conversation with your major donors. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have absolutely had major donors that have invested in building liquidity. Mm-hmm. Again, there's a great case for support right now around the need for reserves, need to have money in the event of a future loss. This is the time to have those conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And like, we're not saying it's a piece of cake and it's real easy to do, but this is the kind of thing that will help you to weather when these things happen. It was the building crisis of 2008. There was probably something else after that.
There was a pandemic out.
Then there was COVID. And when COVID happened, none of us could have the things we always did. And we couldn't do that. We couldn't see our donors face to face. So building during good times and during bad times helps you weather these storms. I will say one, as if we flash back to that day, our large corporation here that was started in Bentonville and has been so generous and so wonderful, they decided to be more structured and restructure their guidelines. I think that was in 2010.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And we were all invited to a meeting, and I really thought there were some people that were just about to pass out there at that meeting when they found out that they weren't going to fit in the guidelines anymore. And honestly, it's their prerogative to be more, and they were trying to solve they did the thing like you're talking about. They evaluated programs. What do we want to stand for? What is the greatest need in our area? And they weren't saying none of your needs are good enough. They were saying we've decided to be more focused, and it cut there were so many that got operations money from them or got grants that funded things. And I remember, I think I raised my hand and just said, are the pharmacy people going to be out in the hall for us after this meeting? Because we're going to need some drugs to recover from the news, to try to because we were all just sitting there. And that's the kind of thing. It's not always federal. It's not always one donor that has always supported you passes away and didn't leave you in their estate plan. It can be a huge grantor, like a foundation that has always given you money that changes their focus, or a corporation that has always sponsored thing and they got a new leader in and they decided you don't fit in what they're passionate about or what matches well with their company values anymore. And so they pivot and they go to something else. And it's all of this that we have to be ready for. And none of it is good, but if we can figure out ways to redistribute some funds as we go to prepare. And I know you've done a great job of that. And I know it probably was not easy to do that. Do you remember the day, like when you had nothing and you're going to meet with everybody to say, we don't have any money, and this we've got to shore some things up. Do you remember how you said, we need to do this so we're never in this situation again? How easy? I know it wasn't easy.
I think when I knew that like we were going to be able to make payroll without me having an anxiety attack, I did the very next board meeting. I went and I was like, okay, what is our reserve building strategy? Because we can't continue to live like this. I can't continue to live like this. This is the path to burnout and turnover. Like this is not sustainable. So what are we going to do differently? And the board was really open to listening to me and giving me some feedback and some strategies. And it was painful when we just had gotten over the hump and to think about, oh gosh, we're going to really start investing in reserve building. But in terms of our ability to maintain full employment during downtimes and continue to expand programs even during downtimes, Teresa's ability to sleep at night. I mean, all of those are real benefits that happened as a result of that willingness to have hard conversations and invest in reserve building. And also, quite frankly, to be mindful of having any one gift make up more than about 5 to 10% of our annual budget. Really thinking about, not that we would turn down a gift that was substantial, but that what happens if we don't have this money? What does that look like? Are we creating a dependency on this one donor? And do we have the liquidity to continue this program in the absence of this donor? So that kind of board exercise on an ongoing basis is really important.
And once again, that donor's wanting to give that large gift. It gives you a whole reason to talk to them about, would you mind if we put so much of this back in our reserve fund so that we can continue this program if for some reason someday something happens, we've saved up. And I'm sure they were always able to say, absolutely. I would love for that program to be going on and on because you have it in reserves or whatever. Yeah.
Donors like strategic thinking on the part of nonprofits. They really appreciate that.
Yeah. And I think that's what you are so good at, Teresa. You have not only just a strategic brain and thoughtfulness about how you go about things, but you're very calm. Like you have a calming voice. I'm saying that now because she's calming me. But like in a crisis, and when you're not in a crisis and being able to be strategic about if a crisis comes, I can see how that would have been hard. Yay, we're finally making payroll and things are on the up and up and we've got enough money generating through. We're doing great. And then you say, okay, now we need to visit how we never want to be in a scary situation again. And I'm sure they all looked at you like, what? But you were strategic and thoughtful and calm to say, I think we need to be really, really smart and start thinking about the future. I think that's huge. And she's just really good at that, y'all. She's really good at that. She's talked many a person down from the frantic, what not to do in a crisis mode and what to do. So we've talked about signs that an organization needs a reset. Right now, it's not necessarily that they need a reset. They're being forced to reset because of,
yes.
And then we've talked about how Teresa stepped into the messy situation and the things she did immediately. And I'm sure if you needed to ask her again, or if you wanted a little like step 1, step 2, step 3, we could get that to you later. Feel free to send me a message and I can get that information to you. She's talked about how she worked internally and externally to change the narrative and she rebuilded trust with donors and board members and staff members through that. And then some things were rebuilt and some things were refreshed, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Those are all the things that you take away. Now, one thing, I'm shifting my focus just a little because there's another amazing thing that Peace at Home Family Shelter has done. And several of us talk about this all the time. There have been other organizations that have done it as well, but Peace at Home is the one that I have experienced firsthand, especially in our area. But I'm sure if you're listening from another state also, I hope you're listening somewhere in Massachusetts or Washington State, wherever you are. We get stuck on special events. And my last episode 2, was with Casey Yoakley, and we talked about the event, the never-ending cycle of special events and silent auctions and live auctions and runs and golf tournaments and galas. And we talked about all of it. We talked about why we need them. And we talked about there are good things that come from them.
Certainly.
We talked about diversifying the bucket. So you don't want all your funds to be coming from your special event. And COVID is a perfect example. When COVID happened, we couldn't have our events.
Correct.
So, but there are pluses for having events. I've said them before. There's an awareness piece, getting in the glossies. It's a friend raiser. You get new people to the table, literally, if you're talking about a gala, where you can share your message. There's a way to celebrate philanthropy. Some events are low-key and more about celebrating philanthropy and awareness than they are gala and frou-frou. Those are some of the great things. The cash is quick. I think that's why board members love events. It's easier for them to invite someone to that than to talk to them one-on-one about their commitment.
It's visible. Flashy.
And it there's wonderful parts of an event, but there's a lot of the real costs that aren't shared. And we've talked about that a lot with Casey. There's work that nonprofit professionals do that takes away from all of this that we're talking about, the relationship building and the one-on-one visiting and the, being transparent. And there's a lot of that. If you're doing event after event after event, you don't get to do all that stuff.
Correct.
And event-heavy nonprofits, although in the moment, if they're all running great, it is some quick cash. It's more transactional. Because they usually get something in return,
right?
Like their steak dinner, or as Casey said, that rubber chicken dinner,
right?
Like they get stuff in return and everybody's on a high, but it's also the quickest thing that can tank if something doesn't hit just right, or a COVID happens, or so there's a real cost there. But when we're talking about if a lot of nonprofits need to really step back and look at that event fundraising and scale that back a notch, because what you've been doing and what we're literally talking about, reserves and all that stuff, that was done without a bunch of, no one said, we're in a crisis, we need to throw a party, right, to have a gala or a golf tournament. That's not what happened. And so I wanted you to share. It is another excruciating thing about fundraising is when you decide that you're not going to have as many events. And the board and donors that love those events say, well, then where's that money going to come from? Can you tell us, how could an organization pivot from being so event heavy to doing, and tell a little bit about Peace at Home, how y'all have pivoted and where your money comes from if you're not having a gala every 5 seconds.
Right. Yeah. So one of the first things I did my very first year at Peace at Home was I eliminated our signature event.
I bet they loved that.
I do not recommend perhaps doing what I did, which was to roll up into a board meeting the beginning of our fiscal year and be like, we're not doing this event anymore. I refuse. And then not fully have a strategy of how we're going to replace that money.
Right.
Do not recommend that. That said, it was the right decision for us because it was incredibly labor intensive. Anyone who has schlepped around picking up silent auction items at 37 different liquor stores, knows what I'm talking about. It is labor intensive. It didn't actually raise a lot of money after we had paid for everything. And donors or people who were attending the event, in some cases, because they had attended so many other events that were similar to ours, didn't even recognize that they were at a Peace at Home event. And I was like, no more. This is not the way we're going to raise money. And so we really took a step back and decided that we were going to focus exclusively on individual donors. All of our time was going to be spent on one-on-one conversations, cultivating, asking, and stewarding individual donors. And we really just went through our database. I didn't have a development director, so this was just me. And I just picked the top 25 donors in terms of who was giving me, not even the most amount, but the most consistently giving to me, I could see increases in giving over time, people that seemed the most connected to Peace at Home. And I just made it my mission to engage with those donors as much as I possibly could. And that was the strategy.
And that means you didn't start engaging by saying, we're cutting our event. Will you give us $5,000? It was literally like, give me an example of how you began to engage. Like,
you certainly have alluded to this. It's like, I want to let you know that we've got 22 kids in shelter today. We've got a kindergarten class in shelter today. Oh gosh, thank you so much for bringing Thanksgiving meals to the clients in shelter. We had such a great time. Or, we've got a family that's about to go into their own apartment next week. I just wanted to let you know this great thing that happened at shelter this week. I think it's just informing them, letting them be a part of the success and feeling mission, being part of it. Spending time with them. I drank so much coffee that first year. Going and meeting with donors and just listening to what their experience with Peace at Home had been, where they thought Peace at Home needed to go, particularly donors who maybe had not recently had a positive experience with Peace at Home in terms of the stewardship or follow-up or whatever, just giving them that space, acknowledging maybe some of those shortcomings and letting them know how things are going to be different moving forward. I don't know that I made an ask that first almost a year. I really just built relationships and built rapport and just engaged those people over and over and over and over. And so that when I was finally making the ask, we were old friends. It wasn't just, I'm meeting you for the first time and I'm going to ask you to replace
this
money.
proposal
Correct.
right here in a pretty folder. Yeah.
Correct.
I've got one question about this because the question is, so the event didn't happen and you spent a year, doing these engagement without asking. Had y'all already built your reserve to cover the event's costs? Because, some people, their events are very successful.
So we had not. And again, in hindsight, I probably would have not asked the board to take a leap of faith with me. Maybe we would have had a transitional year, right? We have our event, but we kind of recognize that we're going to phase it out over the next 2 or 3 years. And in that same period of time, we're going to kind of strategically build up a pipeline for major donors and start a monthly giving campaign and invest in our CRM, doing some of those structural things. I, again, this is what we did. It may not have been best practice. This is what we did. I was like, we're not doing this. I'm not spending a year planning a party. I'm going to spend a year investing in the donors who are going to walk with us. I think depending on the amount of money your event raises, that maybe is a more phased approach. And so you do have to kind of assess that and think about that and think about what your comfort level is. And if you have reserves that you could weather, if you didn't have as large of an event or you had a scaled back event in a transitional period, then that's ideal. That wasn't our experience.
Right. So what did you do? Were you short that year? Did you just have enough to get by without that chunk coming
I think
in?
we were, fortunately, I guess maybe our event wasn't raising that much money.
I gotcha.
Right?
It wasn't to the point where it was a huge portion of that budget.
Correct.
I gotcha.
I think if you have a larger portion of your budget, then maybe that timeline gets expanded. Maybe that's an 18-month or maybe even 3-year transition to pivot to other types of fundraising kind of basics and balance that portfolio a little more.
How many events do y'all have now?
We don't really have events. We do have one small luncheon that is, there's no silent auction. There's no band.
I think I got to go in 24. I didn't get to go this year, but I got to go in 24. And it's like I was talking about. There are galas and golf tournaments and rums and silent auctions, live auctions, but there's also philanthropy events that are driven by awareness and networking and bringing people to the table. And that seems to me what y'all's was like. It was like a luncheon where people could invite someone to sit at their table. Were there ticket prices?
It's free.
It's free?
It's absolutely free. It's really just about celebration. It's stewardship event, really, for us. When we think about this event,
it's a stewardship event. That's exactly what to call it.
It absolutely raises some money. We cover our costs and we raise some money beyond that. But our goal is to share and celebrate how our donor community came together to do great things at Peace at Home. And not through the event, but through the major gift and the annual fund and monthly giving and the volunteer group that came out. Like, those are the people in the room. It's our people.
Awards.
Absolutely.
There's awards.
Yes.
There are awards that are given to the people that have supported you for the year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's what people who aren't in nonprofit, they don't understand how hard those events are. And they don't realize all the extra. So when it's a nice event like that, and you're just worrying about maybe what you're going to serve, where you're going to have it, the table people work out themselves. You're not trying to get a bunch of donated product and all that. You're just trying to get, it's an awareness piece.
Correct.
A friend raiser. And so the expectations are, we just want to at least cover the cost of the dinner.
Correct.
Or the lunch that we're providing and the venue. And if we go over, that's great. But this is our chance to still get that awareness part of an event. But you don't get caught up in the honorary host and the corporate jargon of who's going to rub elbows with who. It's literally a celebration.
Correct.
And I think that is what I wanted to know is your other event that you said it's time for it to sing its swan song and it lift. It wasn't such a huge part of your budget that it didn't create an issue to quit it. And so if someone out there has a huge event that they know is needing to be refreshed or replaced, do the stair-step approach instead of I'm going to come in and rip off the Band-Aids that we're not doing it. Have a plan, phase it out.
Don't do like Teresa did. Actually have a plan and do it more phased. And there are some events that absolutely they raise dollars and they are aligned with your mission and they're wonderful. I think you just have to think about, what are you not doing when you're focused on event planning? And are you missing out on ways to engage donors or to build more than just transactional relationships if you're so focused on throwing a great event.
Mm-hmm.
That's the cost you have to weigh.
One quick question I just thought of. A lot of nonprofits have been telling me how hard it is. You said you drank a lot of coffee that year. How hard it is to get people to accept an appointment or make an appointment. Did you have any special technique when you would call to get them to say yes to meet you for coffee?
Gosh, I think that because our agency was kind of at a crisis inflection point, and there was a lot of, we had some reputational damage and there was a lot of concern. And I was the new kid. I was a new
this was a lovely time.
Yeah.
This was just a lovely time for you, wasn't it?
It was. It was. My husband may have installed a punching bag in my garage to help get me through. But I think that donors were curious. They had a lot of questions and they had a lot of feedback, and they were, in some cases, really angry at our organization because we hadn't sent follow-up grant reports and we hadn't done what we said we were going to do. And so because of that, I kind of had an opportunity to get in the door. I'm getting really basic here, but I know there are friends out there listening that want to know, did you send an email to invite them to coffee? Did you make phone calls, or did you do one thing first and then follow up with the second way? And what verbiage did you use? I'd like to give you an update. I think that's what people hear, especially right now, because they have that situation where the funding's been cut. They need to update. What did you use to say to get your foot in the door? I overwhelmingly made phone calls.
Okay.
Now, of course, this is like mid-aughts. This is a while ago.
Right.
But certainly when I could, I wanted people to hear my voice.
Yes.
I wanted to talk to them. And I really just said, I know, I almost had the speech down. It's like, I know you've not had a great experience with our agency lately. And I want to let you know that I hear that, acknowledge that, and moving forward, you can expect blah, 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 whatever it was, that we'll turn this report in, that we will, send out donor tax receipts timely, whatever it was. I just proactively acknowledge that, hey, your experience may not have been great, but I want to let you know that I'm here to do some course correction, and I would like to meet with you so that we can talk about what your expectations for our agency are. And that really was powerful, and I was surprised at how many people said yes to that. If you've got information about your donor in your CRM that says what their preferred method of communication is, please use that.
Whatever. If they say don't call,
of course,
definitely email.
Of course, yes.
For the most part, and what's beautiful is if they don't recognize the number right away, you can leave that voice message and they can still hear your voicemail, hear your voice and how you're sounding. And
yes.
I love that because I think a lot of people now don't want phone calls. And so we think we'll do the email, hey girl, how are you doing? And that sometimes isn't as good a feeling as just picking up the phone.
Right.
Some people could send an email first that say, I'm going to call you in the next week. And if I don't get you, I'll leave you a message, but just wanted to give you a heads up that expect a phone call from me. So you could do that. But I know that there are people thinking this. I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. I actually think that phone calls are making a resurgence because one of the things that we do with our board members right now is we engage them in stewardship. And so we have them, whenever we have donors that have given in the month, we have board members call them. And the number of board members who really just love talking to our donors on the phone and donors that are just over the moon that someone took the time, a volunteer, a board member, not staff, a volunteer took the time to call them and not just send them a quick email or send them a quick text, the engagement and connection and the satisfaction for both the donor and the board member is really, really powerful.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I know we could, there are so many things we could talk about, but I really know that will help people. Just the way you got your foot in the door. I'm sure when you quit the event, you were able to say to some of those corporate partners, I need to visit with you because we're thinking of doing away with the XYZ event.
That's exactly right.
And that's what you used to say. And I just need to talk to you and get your advice and explain what's been going on behind the scenes so that you can understand. And when I don't want you to hear it from anyone else but me.
Yes. And I was surprised by how many of our individual donors that I thought would have a lot of resistance to giving up events that were like, oh gosh, that means that we don't have to go to another event that we can just have a night home and we don't have to get a babysitter and get dressed up and fight parking in downtown. And, that there was some liberation that they actually found.
Years ago, my friend Hope Bradbury, who is a rock star in herself, she was at the library and they decided no more events. She was done with them. People, I think people's heads exploded.
Right.
But when she showed the board that you can raise the amount that you would raise an event, you could talk to 5 people on your donor list and raise that much money with a cup of coffee.
That's right.
Or a breakfast or a tour or a visit or a relationship. When she explained that, and then she proved it.
Absolutely.
She literally proved it. And that's exactly what you've done too. And that's what we're talking about. The money is not transactional.
Correct.
With an event, it's transactional. They get something in return. Everybody's wondering about whose name's going to be the bigger font, all that. But when you can go to some of those same people and raise even more just from saying your money's going to go straight to the program.
Right.
None's going to go to the chicken dinner or the red carpet or the golf fees, or it's all going straight to the organization. You do bump up the whole return on investment and the time and the energy. And then you are friends with relationships with your donors.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
I'm not saying don't have any events. I'm just saying they can be philanthropic and friend raisers and celebrations of stewardship. They can be all the things, and you don't have to play the game. It is very hard to transition from that, especially in Northwest Arkansas, where events are life. But we're finding as our area grows, and we said this in the last episode, there are a lot of competing things to do.
Correct.
When our events started, there was nothing else to do here. That was the party life, or the after work life, was to go to an event and wear your best, or wear your luau shirt, or golf in that golf tournament. But now we've got amenities in this area because it's grown so fast that the events now have competition with all the other things going on.
Absolutely.
So just take time to consider that. I am going to say, if you'll just give just a tidbit of hope, give some encouragement to these stressed organizations, and maybe one thing they could do this week just to put one foot in front of the other. And
I think that it's hard right now.
It is.
It's hard. And there are many external forces that are testing our resilience. But I think what you have to remember is, even if you have to scale back, even if you have to pivot, even if you aren't able to do as much as you think you should do in this space, in this moment in time, you're not failing. You're still doing the work. You're doing the work. And even if the worst were to happen and your agency was to close tomorrow, the legacy of your agency is valuable. People are safer, they're housed, they've been supported and cared for because of the work that you've done. And so you've got to just keep on keeping on. And you can't let the external pressures prevent the mission and the work. We did great philanthropy before federal money, before signature galas, before online giving and the TikTok. We've done it.
We did.
And we will continue to do great life-changing work. And sometimes the best things that we can do is just focus on what we can control and let the rest of it be the rest of it. We don't make decisions based on the news cycle. Right? We just focus on the mission and the work. That's sometimes you have to let the rest of it go and focus on what you control.
Right.
I think the one thing that I would encourage organizations to do always, not just in difficult times, but always, is to stay close to their donors, not transactionally. Don't treat them like ATMs, but in that relationship way, to avoid mission creep, stay focused on core programs, and communicate authentically and consistently. At the end of the day, tell people about your organization, ask people to support your organization, and thank them for doing so. That's what you can do every day that will put you in a better position to move forward.
I love it. And that's my favorite part. That is my favorite part of all of my nonprofit work is the joy when someone who's passionate about something figures out that they can provide for the thing that they're passionate about, saving, solving, curing, helping. And when they meet that match and they become a true champion and they light up when they talk about it, that is what brings me such great joy in my work. And I know it does for you too.
Yeah, it's transformative. I mean, it's you're helping connect donor passion with true community need, and you're moving mountains together. How can you not be excited to be part of that work?
Right. Okay. We've got some rapid fire questions.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. What is the fundraising myth that you would love to bust?
Oh boy. Well, gosh, this could be its own podcast as well.
Okay. I need to take notes.
I think number one always is we just need one big donor, one big grant, one big special event to save us. I think concentration is always an error. Diversification and spreading out your partners is always the best way to go.
Okay.
Can I give you one more?
Yeah, give me one more because there's a lot out there.
There's so many. I think this is out. My executive director is listening. Some executive directors believe that once they have development staff, that they no longer have a role in fundraising.
This is a good one. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that.
And I cannot stand that. Executive directors have to be involved in fundraising every day.
Every single day.
They have to prioritize what their development staff needs. If my development team is coming to me and saying, we need you to send so-and-so a thank you note because they just joined our Mountain Society, that's going to be number one on my list of things to do. That's not at the bottom of the list of things to do. If I need to call donors, that's going to be at the beginning of my workday because it's essential, and you can't ask your development team to carry the load for you and sit back in a passive way.
And let me just say that she totally could do that because her development team is amazing.
They are amazing.
Eva Terry, I've also known for 1 million years, and she is outstanding in her profession and practice. And so what Teresa's saying is, even though Eva is a rock star in her own, Eva knows that Teresa is there to do the parts that Teresa needs to do. And Teresa knows that Eva will tell her when she's needed and will listen when Teresa has an idea of, I think I might need to do this. They are an excellent team, but that is such a good one. I'm so glad you brought that up because you're right. The development person is not the rainmaker.
Correct.
It's still a team effort. They are just the one that coordinates how the team is going to, solve all the problems.
Absolutely. I always say that I am a fundraiser who happens to be an executive director, not an executive director that dabbles in a little fundraising on the side. Like it is core mission work.
It is. It totally is. And that for all of you executive directors out there, that is what you have to remember. You are still the fundraising. You are still a fundraiser who also dabbles in executive directorness.
Right.
Okay. An event trend that you hope disappears forever.
Oh gosh. So it's clear that I have some special event opinions, but the thing that worries me most with special events, especially if you're going to continue to have this part of your workload, is you have to have meaningful follow-up after your event. That trend of throwing a great party and then not capturing that data, not knowing who's sitting at that corporate table, not sending thank you notes, not inviting them to tour your facility, not transitioning them away from just an event attendee. Why would you waste all of that time and effort and then not do the work to make them a donor in a different capacity? So
exactly.
The trend that needs to end is, we paid the caterers and now we're done. Like the real work has just begun.
Right. Because you wanted the new friends and they all showed up at the table. And if you don't ever get to know them that year before the next event, you're right. It's a whole waste of time, waste of energy. And, I've given tips about that, 2 weeks, or the Monday after the event, do these things. 2 weeks later, do these things. 6 weeks, 8 weeks after, do these things. That, and start trying to get those coffees with people you know. And if somebody invited them, have them help you get them for the coffee or the tour or whatever. There are ways to do it, but that is a great one too. Oh, we could talk all day about myths that we want to bust and things that we could do better. Okay. I know I had one thing next, but I'm going to switch it just real quick.
Okay.
It's the Ask Allison podcast.
Okay.
So all my guests get to ask me a question that I don't know what the question is. So you get to ask me cold, anything you want to ask me. And hopefully I will know the answer or know where to find the answer.
I feel like this is a lot of pressure. I think one of the things that happens when things are difficult is that we lose sight of joy and gratitude and appreciation for the good. So I want to know, Allison, what's the good in your life right now? What brings you joy and happiness and satisfaction?
Oh my goodness. Because I'm a gregarious kind of person. So I'm typically
yes
on the up and up. But aside from my husband and kids and dogs, they always bring me joy. But I think right now, and it's one of those things, is finally feeling like I'm coming into my own.
Yeah.
I finally feel like maybe it's this podcast that maybe it's getting back on the stage for acting that I had put off for so long. Maybe it was doing the work that I needed to do for my health and my weight loss journey. I don't know if there's one thing to pinpoint, but I have a joy right now that I finally feel confident and stuff that you've been telling me about me for years, that you've got it all in you, Allison. You just need to be confident to share it. And I think I finally feel like I can be that person for others. And if it's through this podcast or just through working with my clients or walking down the street, meeting people, dancing where I'm not supposed to dance, I don't know. I just get joy from that and the connection of people.
Absolutely.
I really do.
That's wonderful.
Yes. I think even though times are hard for our nonprofit friends, I'm still finding joy in finding a way to get them some solutions and answers.
Absolutely.
But I think just finally, I have been meaning, and Teresa knows this, y'all, back in the day when we had those Chick-fil-A meetings, I would say that I needed to do, but I finally, with this podcast, I've been saying I needed to do it for probably 5 or 6 years, and to finally just do it. I was making it too hard, which she also knows that I've always done. And I finally just said, and I walked in here and said, I want to do a podcast. And they said, okay. And so I'm doing a podcast. And I feel like I'm finally coming into what I was meant to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
That was a great question. Thank you. And I'll probably think of 5 more things later, and I'll just add those somewhere down the road. But so our takeaways, top takeaways, we've talked about it. The biggest one, I think, was in this time that we're in right now, talk to your board members, your staff, and your donors.
Absolutely.
I call them the inner circle.
100%.
That is your inner circle, your board, your staff, and your top donors. They are the inner circle, and they deserve to know, yes, the state of the union.
Radical transparency, but not panic, right? You are the calm. And that you're asking donors to stand with you, right? This is the moment, and that you're giving them the opportunity to help you weather this.
Yeah, I love it. And then Teresa, we've already said she's the executive director at Peace at Home, but where could someone get in touch with you if they just wanted to ask you a question or follow up with, you said this, but how did you get your board to really hear you? Like, is there an email address they could?
Sure. You could always email me at tmills@peaceathomeshelter.com. I am a Luddite and don't have things like Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram, but you can absolutely always find me through Peace at Home Family Shelter.
Yes. And go to that website as well if you just need to know about the services. And please, if you are someone that is listening, that you know someone that needs the shelter, find a way to connect with them to find the best ways to support your friend. Or if it's yourself, find a way to get on that website and get the services that you need. That's what we want for you most of all.
Absolutely.
So, well, thank you all for being here today. Always tune into the Ask Allison podcast. It comes out on the 7th of every month at 7 a.m. because I love 7s. So that's that for this episode. And I think that the February episode is going to be about wellness and taking care of ourselves.
Fantastic.
Most nonprofit executives and individuals tend to put ourselves on the back burner. So we're going to talk about that. Thanks again for listening. I know you can listen to a million things, but I'm glad you tuned in today.